Hi everybody, welcome to FNS Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, back on a beautiful Monday evening to talk about some Ring of Honor. Gonna hit on episode 521 today, showed up on my recording device on September 11th. May even talk a little bit about, Death by Dishonor. I did watch the first 4 matches, I haven't had a chance to watch the rest, and unlike some podcasts out there, I refuse to talk about anything with you guys that I haven't actually seen, so I'll only be talking about the matches that I did see. I don't know if I'll get a chance to check out the whole thing. There's a good chance I will. I'm not sure if I'll sit down and get a chance to talk about it with you, but I thought I might go run down quickly what I did get to watch so far. So if you're a new listener, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. Normally on Saturdays, our main show is with myself and my teenage son, where we cover NXT, Impact Wrestling, and some AEW Dynamite, along with some trivia, some talk of wrestling figures and whatnot. And then Mondays, I've been sort of a couple months now just coming down here to talk about Ring of Honor on my own, because my son doesn't watch it with me yet. He did watch a bit of Death by Dishonor because the crowds were back, which has been what he's waiting for, and as well, he is the biggest Taylor Rust fan you can probably find from his brief stint in NXT, so he was on that show, so he watched a little bit of it with me as well. But it's just going to be me talking about this. If you would like to contact myself, my son, either of us, and let us know anything, what you think of the podcast, what you think of wrestling in general right now, that'd be great. It's fnswrestling@gmail.com. That'll come to me. FNS_wrestling_podcast on Instagram. That will go to my teenage son Jackson. Or if you're one of the very few that listen on YouTube, you feel free to leave a comment there. I will definitely get back to you. Obviously, any likes, subscriptions, follows are always welcome as well. Really appreciated. So, what's new for me? Well, the only banter I want to talk about is my first love of any sports, and that was the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays and I were born in the same year. So despite me probably loving the Raptors more at this point, the Blue Jays were my first love. They are on fire right now. Currently in position for a playoff spot, so I've just been enjoying watching them. I think they've scored 44 runs in the last 3 games or something. So just an absolute offensive explosion that's fun to watch. So that's got me sort of watching a little bit of baseball right now, hoping for a nice playoff run here. But other than that, there's not much going on in my life. Interesting week of work starting out, so I'm happy to come down here and just get a little bit of a break from everything and talk some wrestling to you folks. So I say I should probably do that now. So let's get started by talking about Ring of Honor Television, episode 521. So for this show, we do get to see Quinn McKay is back at her usual spot at the desk, welcoming us, telling us that this is a Death Before Dishonor weekend. And that tonight on the show, in the main event, we're going to get a Death by Dishonor bonus match featuring an ROH Tag Team Championship between LFI and the current champions, Violence Unlimited. We're also going to see Will Ferreira take on Josh Woods, who they tell us is the #1 contender for the Pure title in a Pure Rules match. And this is all sort of strange because, at least where I live in Southern Ontario, I get Ring of Honor on Sunday nights at 11 o'clock. So that means the pay-per-view had already ended. So despite the show, according to their timeline, taking place before the pay-per-view, I actually got it after the pay-per-view. So not to spoil anything, because I'm going to talk about it later anyways, but Josh Woods did win the ROH Championship. So them on the TV show telling me that he's the #1 contender when I just watched him on the pay-per-view before this, already winning the championship, was a little bit strange. And I know that there's probably nothing they can do about that because they pre-record the shows, or it's probably not released at this time everywhere. But for me, at least, regardless of the reason, it doesn't help ROH that this happens in some of the regions of people watching them, because for me, it's kind of strange. They're talking about stuff that I already watched happen that, according to this show I'm watching, hasn't happened yet. But anyways, again, probably not their fault. Might be just I'm at the mercy of where I live and when things are televised, but just something I thought was a bit strange and I would mention. So also, sorry, snuck a sneak sip of coffee there. In the opening match, we're going to get Bandito and Ray Oris taking on the Briscoes in a tag team match. And so that is the first thing we get as this match basically starts. So they're doing brief little promos sort of put in as teams are making their way to the ring. So the first one we get is the Briscoes cutting a promo. They talk about being back, and I think being back together. They say the others might be nice, but the Briscoes are nicer. The others might be bad, but the Briscoes are badder. Dem boys versus your boys. Let's do this thing. So a standard Briscoe promo, right? They're just trying to add something to what kind of feels like a random match. And I'm personally happy to see the Briscoes back together as a tag team. That's kind of how I prefer them. They had a bit of a time apart and then sort of feuding and then back together. So fully back as a tag team, which I'm happy to see. Then Oris and Bandito get their turn to speak. Horace says that he's been waiting for this opportunity his whole life. Bandito says that he and Oris will show off the real lucha libre. So again, these guys are really not getting any time to say anything. To me, it kind of feels like, as a guy who was watching wrestling at that point, sadly, in the 80s, this feels like just kind of those quick 80s promos before the guys head out for their matches sort of thing. So there's nothing really special, or you're not really learning much here. It's just kind of pretty much one or two lines for each person and then they're out. So I can't really say too much about them. Nothing offensive, but nothing amazing either. So the match starts. Jay Briscoe and Bandito start kind of slowly with holds and counters, and then Bandito's making some taunting gestures like the finger guns right into Jay's face, I believe it was. The pace then picks up after that. They trade Hurricane Ranas, and then there's sort of a stalemate after they both go for a dropkick at the same time. So we're told during a commercial break when we come back that the Briscoes took control of Rey Oris and have been sort of isolating him in their corner since. Things then briefly spill outside. The Briscoes stay in control at that point. We get some double teaming of Rey Oris as Bandito's still out on the floor. And then a bit after that, Bandito and Oris get their team to double team Jay as Mark is out on the floor. Jay briefly here for one brief spot kind of goes after Bandito's mask. But then the Briscoes end up isolating the ROH champion for a little while here in their corner. Oris finally makes the tag, lands a flurry, ending in a leg drop for a 2 count. Mark Briscoe is then double teamed, and I called it a double flapjack. I'm actually not sure if that's quite correct, but it's pretty close. And then a kick. Things break down. All 4 men now are down on the mat after a bunch of kicks to each other. We get what I believe is called the Iconoclasm by Mark Briscoe for a near fall. Then we get kind of a nice drop toe hold tornado combo by Bandito and Rey Oris. A Fosbury flop by Bandito and a Quesadora driver, I believe they called it, by Rey Oris for a 2 count. They point out that that's won Oris matches in the past. And then the finish comes as Bandito's on the floor. Oris gets caught and hit with the Doomsday device, and the Briscoes win this match. They do adhere to the code of honor after the match. I really like this match. I thought it was a pretty much a non-stop back and forth match involving, this is 4 really good wrestlers in the ring, so give them a bit of time. And it was a good match. Each team got to show off a bit of double team moves, and there were no real lulls in the action. This was pretty much, it started out slow for a few seconds, and then it was pretty much go after that. I personally don't love Bandito losing. He is the champion of your company. However, he's not in an official tag team at this point. He didn't take the pinfall, and he is facing the most established of tag teams in ROH, I would suggest, in the Briscoes. So I guess that's okay. But again, I would like to keep Bandito looking strong with wins as often as possible, but I'm also a big fan of Bandito, so likely a little bit biased. But honestly, I thought this was a really good match, and for a TV opener, pretty excellent for Ring of Honor. We then move into the second match, which is a pure rules match. Will Ferreira taking on Josh Woods. So again, they get these brief little promos before, kind of as they're heading to the ring. They cut away to a promo from earlier. Ferreira says he feels at home in the pure division, and he thanks Jonathan Gresham for that. Gresham was the one that let him know his best days will come, and those days will come in this division. He will make Gresham and his dojo proud, and he will make Woods tap. Again, another fine promo. Nothing special, nothing wrong with it. I did like that he let us know he comes from the dojo and that Gresham has trained him. I always like when people try to throw in a little bit of background information for me, so I appreciated that. Then Josh Woods really says almost nothing, basically that Ferreira is good and he respects him, but when it comes to the pure title, it belongs to the technical beast. So there's not much I can say. It was literally one line, I think, so I don't know. It was fine, I guess, is my standard go-to. It was fine, folks. So this match starts, and Woods, who is just a beast, overpowers Ferreira early, and Ferreira has to escape to the corner sort of thing to get away from this attack. Next, we get some holds and counters, as it is the pure division. And that's what happens a fair amount. So on the mat and standing for a little bit here. Then Woods slams Ferreira, but Ferreira maintains wrist control still, which I thought was pretty cool. And then I finally just noticed that Gresham is on commentary because ROH just loves right now. It's like Impact loves every segment backstage being interrupted by somebody, and ROH loves every match having a guest commentator, and basically every single one of them adds nothing. There's been nobody that's come on commentary that I thought has really added anything or been really impressive. Although, to be fair, when I'm taking notes as I'm watching a wrestling show, commentary is kind of the first thing that sneaks by me, because I'm really focused on what's happening visually, and taking notes on it, that sometimes I miss commentary, but I haven't found any of the guest commentators. Dak Draper's kind of good, I guess, but the rest don't really add too much. Will Ferreira uses a rope break early to avoid being picked up by Woods again, because Woods can just manhandle the smaller Ferreira if he needs to. Ferreira then works Woods' arm, but Woods counters into the gorilla lock, and Ferreira has to use his second rope break. We get more holds and counters on the mat, with each man rolling around, until Woods just picks Ferreira up basically with one arm and slams him. Really impressive. This Woods' strength is pretty insane. Combine that with his technical ability, and they may really have something. I wasn't the biggest fan of Woods early on, but I have to say he's definitely growing on me. Ferreira then uses his final rope break to avoid a German suplex. He lands a flurry before Woods just flattens him with the forearm, hits the Chaos Theory, which I really like, and Wood wins this match, and then Gresham sort of leaves the commentary booth to go down and sort of step to Woods briefly before just shaking his hand. So I thought this match was okay, but to be honest, I think this should have been a really quick, dominant win for Woods. He's heading into a title match on the pay-per-view, or for me, I had already seen him in the title match on the pay-per-view. And Ferreira's not really anyone that they focus on talent-wise in ROH. So for me, I think Woods should have won this a lot quicker and more dominant. Ferreira never really had a chance, but I guess he got a decent showing here. A lot of grappling for my taste throughout this match, which isn't my favorite thing, but some people may love it. But again, it's not really my taste. But I don't think this was a bad match, but I didn't think it was great either, if I'm being honest with you. And I always am. We then get brief highlights of the semifinal matches in the women's tournament, which is leading to a final for us on Death by Dishonor between Miranda Alize and Roxy, and that is something I would like to see, so it'll probably motivate me to watch the rest of Death by Dishonor in the next day or two. We then get our main event on this show, which is LFI versus Violence Unlimited for the ROH Tag Team Championships. So LFI, again, everyone gets a brief little promo segment here. So LFI talk about, it's Dragon Lee, and he says something, he makes a reference to the Return of the Dragon movie, and then says, well, the dragon has returned, referring to himself. King says it's going to be the smartest that will win, and they have been, and always will be the tag team champions. He says they are ready and that they run this place. So I thought this was fine, I guess, but I mean, I don't think Kenny King's line makes much sense of saying they are the champions. They have been, because they're not the champions. So I have a bit of an issue there. They're not. It's that simple. And I didn't think Dragon Lee's line about the Return of the Dragon was very strong. It's kind of not a timely reference at all, and it's a really on the nose, like, hey, ever heard of Return of the Dragon? I'm a dragon and I've returned, kind of thing. So not exactly the most subtle, clever line. And I love Dragon Lee, but I thought that this promo was not really strong. Although King definitely has charisma and personality, but I don't know, it's telling me that you are the champions when you're not. It's a bit of a disconnect for me. So Homicide, then they get their chance to speak, obviously, Violence Unlimited. So Homicide said that Kenny King is a betrayer, and something about Dragon Lee getting his mask ripped off. I couldn't quite tell. Dickinson says there's honor in violence, and that it's about time he got his hands on Dragon Lee. He says they're coming for the titles. He doesn't think so. So I thought this was a fine promo. Again, nothing fantastic. But the levels of the mix, I guess, I don't know how to say it. I'm not a sound guy necessarily, but the background music was a bit too loud and their voices were a bit too soft and parts of it were hard to hear. I even went back to try and hear part and still couldn't hear it. So I just sort of gave up and tried to summarize as best I could. But again, these promos aren't really anything that needs to be focused on anyways. There's not much you can really sink your teeth into because there's no real time to build any depth or feuds or anything like that in this company. Again, I say it all the time. You're probably tired of me hearing me say it. They've got, like, without commercials, like, 50 minutes of television, basically, a week to get all of these wrestlers over and get into storylines and feuds and things. So they simply don't do it. Or do it very often. I was telling my son that the way and I think I mentioned it on the podcast, to help my enjoyment, I just have to think of it as though I've gone to an indie show and I'm watching an indie show where I don't know any of the characters really or the storylines, and I'm just hoping for interesting matches being thrown together, because that's really all ROH has time for. So in ring, it's usually going to be pretty strong, but if you're a storyline person and you want these lengthy feuds and things with lots of details and backstory, you're probably in the wrong place, to be honest. So you either just have to accept that and appreciate it for what it is, or sort of move on, I think. So Shane Taylor joins the commentary team for this match, and even though I find him amazing on the mic and I love his promos, again, I didn't think he added too much here. So Homicide sort of fakes the code of honor at the beginning, but Kenny King still gets control of the match early with some technical wrestling. Dickinson tags in, so does Dragon Lee. Dickinson just going a million miles an hour running the ropes, hits a shoulder tackle, a back elbow, and a belly-to-back suplex. Violence Unlimited then are double teaming Dragon Lee, and Homicide even bites Lee's fingers, as Shane Taylor talks about it being coronavirus. You shouldn't be biting people's fingers, probably a fair point. Things break down on the floor. All four of them are brawling. LFI get a chance to double team Homicide as the refs briefly distracted. LFI then sort of isolate Homicide in their corner. Dragon Lee applies a half crab. Lee then hits his signature rapid corner offense, followed by a kick to the face from Kenny King as well. Homicide finally slams King, but misses a top rope splash. Dickinson finally gets the tag, runs over Dragon Lee, hits a corner clothesline and a suplex, and transitions right into an arm breaker. German suplex by Dragon Lee, but a Spicoli driver by Dickinson, as the pace is sort of picking up here in the last few minutes of this match. Homicide hits a cutter to King. King then hits a double underhook powerbomb to Homicide for a near fall. Lee hits a corner stomp to Dickinson, who's sort of hanging upside down from the corner. Then he hits a suicide dive to Homicide out on the floor, while Kenny King hits a royal flush to Dickinson back in the ring for a near fall. We get two nice high knee strikes by Lee to Dickinson for a near fall, and then the incineration kick. Dragon Lee pins Dickinson as Kenny King is holding off Homicide, and LFI win the tag team championships for the second time, this time on ROH TV. So I thought this was a really good TV main event for Ring of Honor. And I'm going to specifically mention Chris Dickinson because I hadn't seen a lot of him. And I've started seeing him all over the place on indies and in larger promotions as well. I become more impressed with the more I see him. He is just so aggressive and seems to be going a million miles an hour. He almost seems like he's one of those people that's going too fast for his own good, but somehow everything still kind of works. So I just think he kind of just looks like this wildly aggressive, he only has one speed sort of thing, and I quite enjoy it. I do prefer the belts in this situation on LFI. Just at this point, Homicide doesn't do much for me at this point in his career. I mean, I would personally, from what I've seen of Dickinson, I'd like to see him get a singles run. But again, that might be tough for him right now in this company. They don't have a lot of time, and they seem to already have their guys positioned at the top, I think. But I don't know, if Dickinson gets a chance, I'd be interested to see him sort of get some focus as a singles wrestler. I do love Dragon Lee. I'm always happy for him to have any sort of gold. So all in all, I thought it was a very entertaining match and a pretty strong main event for ROH TV. So technically, this was a go-home show before the pay-per-view, despite airing after the pay-per-view where I live. So I'm going to treat it still as a go-home show, and I would say that it was a pretty good go-home show. The opening match and the main event were particularly good. I thought an excellent TV matches by ROH standards. The match in the middle was fine, but I didn't think it was particularly strong. Again, I think it was too competitive. Woods should have just not quite squashed Ferreira, but decisively beaten him quickly. But anyways, I was surprised to see the tag team titles change hands on the show, but I think it helps to make the weekly show seem a bit more important, right? Like, things of consequence do happen on this show. Titles will change hands on this show sometimes. You may not see top tier talent on the show every week because I feel like sometimes we don't get a lot of star power, but at least eventually we are going to get those stars. We are going to see titles change. So I really like 2 out of 3 matches on this show. I think overall it was a good show, went by pretty quickly. So I'm going to give it a B+ this week because there was some star power. There were 2 good matches, and it was leading into their pay-per-view. So I thought it was a pretty good go-home show for Ring of Honor, a B+. So I guess I will take a few moments to talk about what I've seen from Death Before Dishonor. So I apologize again. It's only the first 4 matches I've seen. Sorry, more coffee. Really needing some coffee right now. So I watched the first 4 matches. I'll talk about them really, really quickly here, and then I'll probably go back and watch the rest. Maybe I'll sit down and do another bonus episode. Who knows? If somebody tells me they really want me to, I'll probably do it. So I did not watch the pre-show with the Battle Royal, but I am going to go back and check that out because I'm interested. I did get spoiled on who won it. I won't say it here, but I am interested in seeing it. So the opening match on the show proper after the free pre-show is Dalton Castle taking on Eli Isom. And Dalton Castle did end up winning this match with his Bangarang finisher. I believe it was the second time he went for it. He was successful and picked up the pin. I thought it was a pretty entertaining opener, but I was a little bit surprised to see Eli Isom lose here because I thought he was kind of being built nicely, and I would have, if it were me, I would have had him pick up the win here to keep sort of building him because I think he has a ton of potential and is a really young guy without a lot of experience. So I think he's somebody that going forward could be sort of a big deal for them. That being said, even though Isom didn't win, it did involve some interference along the way from the Baby Chickens. If you're not watching ROH and you're counting on me to sort of fill you in on it, the Baby Chickens are basically the guys that accompany Dalton Castle to the ring, and they're wearing masks and white t-shirts and like metallic boxers, I want to say. So they come down and he calls them Baby Chickens, and we were told by commentary it's not chicks, it's chickens. So I'm going to respect that. So they interfered at some point. Dak Draper got involved at another point. So the deck was really stacked against Isom, and Castle has not been winning a ton lately, so maybe he needed this win. But again, if it were me, I probably would have given Isom the win here. But a decent match. I mean, it didn't feel a lot different from a TV match. Like this could be a pretty decent TV match, but not a bad match to start this show. We then get one that I was looking forward to for a couple reasons. Taylor Rust versus Jake Atlas, both recently from WWE NXT, a show that I have watched literally every episode since it began and have been reviewing it for over the past year on our flagship show on Saturdays. You could check that out if you're interested. My 14-year-old son is probably the biggest Taylor Rust fan you're going to find. When he debuted in NXT, he took on Tommaso Ciampa in what was a really good TV match and surprised me too because I'd seen him a bunch on the independent scene because I watch a whole bunch of random obscure wrestling sometimes when I'm bored, and I hadn't seen him have a match that good, probably because in some of these smaller indie feds he's not facing anybody of talent that he can sort of pull all of this stuff out with. So anyways, I was looking forward to see him. And as well, I hadn't been very impressed with Jake Atlas in NXT, but I listened to a lot of podcasts and things about wrestling as well. And a few places I really trust have assured me that Jake Atlas is pretty fantastic and that WWE just didn't really allow him to showcase, which is definitely a possibility. So I was really looking forward to see this because I was telling my son as we're watching it, you've got two guys that are probably trying to get signed by ROH. So chances are they're just going to go all out and try and just put on a heck of a match. So we were looking forward to this. Basically, Russ does end up winning with sort of a double arm submission that actually looks pretty cool and painful, where he's really wrenching both of Atlas's arms behind his back. But this match was strange. It was kind of rolling along, kind of a technical battle. I was enjoying it. And then things got strange. So I'm not sure if Atlas got hurt somewhere along the line, but things got really sloppy and there was miscommunications, and it seemed to me like Atlas was the one confused, but it even seemed like my son and I looked at each other because there was Rust hit the eat defeat or the soul food, and the ref said that Atlas kicked out, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. He wasn't really responding. And then not long after that, he did tap out to that submission and the match was over. So I'm not convinced that this is how this match was going to go. Something was weird. I don't know if Atlas got hurt or got, I don't want to say knocked out, but was like sort of dazed a little bit or something. But something weird went on here as things started off well and there's sort of ground to a halt. I'm glad Taylor Rust won. I like both of these guys, but I kind of prefer Rust. I just know him a little better. I've been watching him in the indies for years and years. But I was, as I said, looking forward to this match, and it was fun to start with, but then just hit a wall of weirdness and kind of ended pretty suddenly. So I'd be fine if they gave these two another chance at this match, because I have a feeling this isn't completely how this was supposed to go. The next match was a 6-man tag team match with Violence Unlimited, so Homicide, Chris Dickinson, and Tony Deppen. They defeated a team of John Walters, who's a former ROH Pure champion, LSG, who they just kind of plug in whenever they need a decent wrestler somewhere, and Lee Moriarty, who I hadn't seen before but has just signed, I believe, with AEW, so I was curious to see him because I've heard his name, but I don't think I've seen him anywhere before. So anyways, throughout this, Walters hits double submissions along the way. I know one was a double Muda lock. I forget what the other one was. But anyways, Dickinson ends up pinning Moriarty after a Death Valley driver. I thought the match was fun. Everybody got a chance to look good in it, I think. But at the end of the day, this was an established faction who's gotten some attention lately in Violence Unlimited, facing what I would consider like a cobbled together team. So I don't think the result was ever really in doubt. And again, there's no real story going on here. So you just, again, treat it like you're at an indie show and it's a bunch of guys wrestling and you're hoping to enjoy the match, which I did. I thought it was pretty good. I was looking forward to Moriarty. He is really quick and pretty flashy. I mean, I wasn't blown away. I think there's a lot of guys that are kind of similar right now, but he doesn't look bad at all for sure. I think he's pretty good. I thought this was a solid 6-man tag team match, but again, I mean, there's no doubt who is going to win this one, I didn't think. We then move to the Briscoe brothers taking on Matt Taven and Mike Bennett. So if you listen to me talk about ROH at all, you know I'm not a big fan of Matt Taven and Mike Bennett. I just don't find them believable as faces. I think they're both good in ring, but I'm not sure they're amazing. I consider Taven to be overrated. That might not be fair, but I've never been super impressed with him, and considering he's a former champion and all that, I personally don't see it. But anyways, I have to say I thought they looked really good in this match, and I thought this was a pretty fun match. We had Mark Briscoe took Mike Bennett out on the floor, and then in the ring, Taven actually countered the J Driller into a roll-up for the win. I thought this was a pretty good match and a quality win for Bennett and Taven. Again, the Briscoes are like the most established team ever, so getting a win over them is always good. So even though I don't like Bennett and Taven, I thought they looked good and that the Briscoes are almost always excellent, I think, and they probably helped make Taven and Bennett look strong here. But I thought this was a pretty entertaining, like, mid-card tag match because it's not for any real stakes or anything, but maybe they're going to start to focus on these teams in the tag division. I thought that was a good match. So the last match that I saw, and the last thing I'll talk about here, was my favorite match of what I saw, which sometimes I don't love the pure matches because there is so much grappling and holds and counters and things, and I'm not an expert in MMA or anything like that, so I probably don't pick up on the nuance as well as some people who know it a lot better than I do. But in this match, Josh Woods defeated Jonathan Gresham and did win the ROH Pure Championship in what I thought was a pretty great match. I really enjoyed it. Basically, each man was constantly working the arm of the other, and sometimes I'll get tired of this, but I didn't because these guys have such a vast knowledge of how to do this, so they can really vary their attacks, and I don't get bored. I thought it kind of worked. A lot of involvement from the referee here. He kept warning them because they were kind of both in the ropes and it was hard to tell who was there. So he told them he was just going to take rope breaks away from each of them, and he did twice because, again, they just kind of get tangled up in the ropes. It's really hard to tell who's in a hold because they're both holding each other and who's trying to get a break because they both are. So he just took rope breaks away from both of them. There was one also where the ref called a kick out by Gresham. I forget what the move was, but I literally rewound it, and I didn't see Gresham move his shoulder 1 inch yet. He called a kick out, so I don't know what happened there. But anyways, I can forgive it. And then later on, the ref sort of rules the match a draw because there is a pinning predicament, but both men's shoulders are down. So he rules it a draw, but Jonathan Gresham, being the honorable person he is and just representing that pure division, I guess, he refuses that decision and demands that they restart the match, so they do. So Woods eventually wins when he powers out of a wrist lock, and I don't think I can explain this properly, but basically he's got Gresham in what set up for like a tombstone pile driver, and instead he just launches him overhead and releases him, and Gresham lands really hard, and it's convincing to say like it looked like he hit the back of his head on the mat. Commentary was trying to say he was out. It did look pretty violent, so I don't think I've seen this move before, and I don't know how safe it is, but Woods is an absolute beast, and Gresham's like 5'4", although he is looking super jacked right now. So Woods just tossed him, and it looked pretty hard impact on the mat, and Woods picks up the pin from that move right there. So I really enjoyed this match. I'm really happy for Woods picking up, especially They give us a little bit of story about him that I'll get into in a second here. So he picks up the win and the championship. He really is a beast, man. He's grown on me in the past few months, and when he's involved in matches where he only grapples and it's super technical, I kind of get bored. But when he mixes it in with his aggressive throws and just picking people up and slamming them, I can quite get into his matches. I'm sure other companies are going to be after this guy whenever he becomes a free agent, just because of the look and the ability that he has. He is a beast. So I really enjoyed this match, and sometimes I don't in the pure division. Even though at one time I thought it's what I really wanted when the tournament started. And then I got too much of it. But I thought this was an excellent Pure Rules match by two just super technical guys. So as I was saying a little bit about Woods, Riccaboni and Coleman then talk about how Josh Woods recently lost his father over the past couple weeks. I believe they even said to COVID. They said his father was actually scheduled to see Woods wrestle in person for the first time at this show. So that's pretty heavy for Josh Woods. Really glad that he picked up the win here. Really sorry for his loss. That's got to be tough to get through. So at the end, Gresham sort of wrenches the belt away from Woods, and we're wondering, like, is he upset? Is he stealing the belt? But no, he just wanted to be the classy former champion and strap the belt around Woods' waist and shake his hand. And then Woods basically celebrated with the championship. So I thought that was the best match of the four I saw. No surprise, because the other ones were kind of early card matches. And I'm probably going to check out the rest. But that is everything I saw of Death by Dishonor so far. So I apologize for the partial review, but I don't know if I'll get back to doing the whole thing. So I thought I would at least talk about what I did see. So that's going to bring me to the end of this week's Ring of Honor review. And I really appreciate any time you spend listening to me talk about wrestling. I'd love to hear from any of you, so feel free to contact us any way you would like. I would definitely get back to you. I'd appreciate any sort of feedback, or just want to chat wrestling for a minute. Give me your opinion on anything that you saw. That would be great. And we'll definitely be back on Saturday for our main show. It will be episode 61. We usually publish that somewhere before dinner time on Saturday, so you can look for that if you're interested in more talk from us. But I think that's going to be it until Saturday. So hopefully I will see you back here. And until then, take care.